I'm going to be replacing the brake line on my Ford F-350. Last night when we were moving Kara and Krista out of their apartment, this happened. All this brake fluid. That brake line decided it was done. Well, I got the brake line off and it's in really bad shape. Obviously it was leaking, so that means it's in bad shape. Yeah, I know there's lots of different ways that brake lines can be, well, I shouldn't say lots of ways, but there's other ways to repair brake lines. I've made mine from scratch before, and I've also did it this way where you actually buy segments of brake line like these. They're pre-made, and then you basically take connectors and you connect the lines to each other end to end like this, with a butt connector in the middle. So this brake line that I'm working on today went from up here to this, from this point right here, and then it snaked through this frame up here, in behind the gas tank, up in there, all the way back here where that wrench is. I don't know if you can see that. So I was able to snake it out. When I actually loosened both ends, the nut, the flare nut, was so tight on and rusted onto the line that it actually broke the line on one end and twisted the other one. So the brake line is probably doesn't have the same bends that it had originally, but with the new lines, I'm just going to be bending them just enough to make it work and to fit in our connectors that hold the line, and hooking them together so it will fit in through there and come out right. And then there's some lines on the back. These lines right here, this one right here, and the same thing over there. This line right here is bad too, so I'm gonna try to switch them out as well. Regardless what size of line you have, I have 1/4 inch line here and some 3/16 line. Regardless what kind of line you're replacing, you will pretty much always have to put some bends and some curves in the line. And this tool here I bought several years ago that is used for doing that. So I'll be demonstrating some of that here in a minute. It's very important to have a tool like that, because if you just try to bend it by hand, you'll most likely kink it. And then it's basically no good. Just a side note, when I had to get those other lines off, I basically had to use a vice grip on the nut. You're usually gonna have to use a vice grip on them because they're usually so tight that you can't get them with a wrench. Your wrench will just round off. So use a vice grip on the small nut and then a end wrench on the female part that's holding the flare. All right, so I'm gonna slide this brake line in here and see how things are gonna look starting out. Okay, right away I can see I'm gonna have to, it's kind of coming down at an angle. I'm gonna have to put a bend in it so I can bring it down. It's a lot of fun feeding this stuff through. Gets caught on everything, but that's just part of it. Make sure when you put your bends in here that you have your nut at the end, otherwise it'll be stuck back here, and if your bend's too tight, you won't be able to get your nut back down to the end. So how this thing works, it's been a while. Bring your line in like this. This thing opens up, lets you have lots of room, and you put it on the one that most fits your line, just like that. See how that's in there? Turn this around like that. Then you just take it and you just pull this on around, and it just bends it right around just like that. So that's going to give me, when I need to come out, and then I need to drop it down a little bit and put another bend to go back the other way. So I'm going to try to bend the line back this way. And this, you know, if you don't do this every day, it's going to take a little finagling to figure out what you're actually trying to do, get the result you want. But just give yourself some time and do some thinking so you don't bend it the wrong way. And it actually has degrees on it, so you can kind of get an idea how much bend you want to you're putting in it. So that looks like what I want right there. Straight, fairly straight. So I'm going to put a bend and bend it back this way. Let's see how that looks. That looks really good so far. I actually might have put a little too big of a bend in here. So I might have to stretch it back out just a hair. You just got to be careful because you can overdo it pretty quick. That is looking really good now. Your bends don't have to be perfect. They don't have to match the old one. They just have to get you where you want to go and line up with your end fittings and your holders and everything to your satisfaction. So as long as it does that and you don't have any kinks, you should be good. Okay, I'm fairly happy with the way that line fits back there with just those two bends that I put in here. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down so when it gets behind the tank, it's not flopping around. It's giving me a true reflection of how it's going to sit. I'm going to hook this end up. Make sure you don't have any crud in the end of your line. So I just ran into a little bit of a problem. The third piece that I got for this brake line, the third segment, is too short. So rather than run back in town, I have some extra 1/4 inch line from another brake job that I did. So I'm going to measure how much I need to make the distance and then show you how I'm going to make one from scratch. Alright, the piece I got is 20 inches and I need about 24 inches. So I'm just a little short. So I'm going to use this piece I got right here, about 48 inches long, and make this work. I'm going to cut this piece so I can get these fittings off the end, and then I'll put it on my new piece. If you're going to do any cutting like this, on any kind of line like this, you have to have one of these types of tools to do it with. If you just use a saw, you won't get a square end, and then you'll have problems. So I'm going to try it with a little cutter first. It's kind of cute, and it just fits the size of the pipe pretty well. So how these work is you tighten it a little bit, and then you make a round, tighten a little bit more. Just keep doing that. It's not a fast process, but it will give you a nice finish. Knowing how to do your own brake lines, especially if you're like me and you buy used vehicles, this is a handy thing to know. It's not really that difficult once you get a few of the basic tools. And this little one is just a little bit. This would probably work better on like an aluminum pipe. So since I got steel here, I'm just going to use a bigger cutter. Okay, perfect. Now I'll get a little tool to deburr the inside of that. Well, actually, I'll just use this thing I think here for that purpose. That way you don't have restriction in your line. Okay, now we're going to put a little flare on there. You gotta have one of these tools here. And I actually had the wrong end. You want to have the end that the numbers are on in the bevel, the beveled end. It has the size right there, 1/4 inch. Put it on there. Have a little sticking out. Tighten this down evenly. Very, very tight. So you don't want it moving when you start your flare, I should say. Then you just line it up and you just twist. Loosen these up. Now, like I said, if this was the second end, I'd be in trouble because I didn't have my nuts on there, but I can slide them in from the other end anyway. And I think I might have actually made my flare a little too big. Yeah, I might have to redo that. I don't know, maybe not. I think I will. I think I made it just a little too big. Alright, I like that one better. It's a little bit smaller, and I think these nuts will fit on there better. So basically, you want this pipe, the end of this, just about, maybe just sticking up above the surface about a hair, because it smashes the flare, it flares it out down into this chamfer. So if you have it about flush or just slightly higher, it's going to give you just about the right width when you're all done. So I'm going to take this new segment apart that I bought that's too short, and get the nuts off of it so I can use it. Alright, so I'm going to get my nuts on here first so I do not forget them. That looks very, very good. And I'm going to make my new one a little bit longer than I even need, and I can always put some curves in it or something if it's too long, but I don't want to cut myself short. You turn this just a little bit just so it gets tight, and then you make a couple turns before you tighten it up again. Alright, put a flare on this end. Just a smidge high. I think we're there. It's pretty good. Okay, I want to show you this before I get it up in there. So this piece here, or my brake line, is behind there, as you can see. And then it goes up into, and it needs to go into that, which is at an angle. So what I had to do, let's put like a, had to put my bend here, but then on this bend I had to have my thing angle it so it would be at the right angle to hook into that other end up there. So before I get it up in there, just in case everything works out right, I wanted to show you what that looked like. So that is gonna work. The angle, I think I can get it started in that end, right up in there, and it's hooked onto this end. And granted, it's not gonna be exactly like it was originally, but it will definitely do the job, I think. All right, I loosened the other end so I could get this to a point where I could get to them, so I can tighten them up. And you want these pretty snug so that they don't leak. So I had to make this little bend with my fingers and just my hand to get it to be the right angle that I could start it in the threads, but you have to make minor adjustments like that. this just gives you an idea what working with brake lines is like. It feels good to do your own work. It's really good. Come down there, goes in behind the tank. Goes all the way up there, and I just gotta hook that end up yet. Okay, we're looking at the back end here, and we're gonna try to get some of these lines off and get them replaced. This is what I meant earlier about you might have to use a vice grip. There's no way this is gonna turn with an end wrench. Wow, sucker is corroded on there. This is what you get a lot of times going on. See, I got this side loose, but it's so stuck. It's turning the whole thing, which is breaking it off on the other end. This one's being a real pain. Yeah, whew. That one was in there good. Took a lot of vice gripping. All right, as you can probably see, this piece here is way too long. But what I can do is I can cut it down, and then just, whereas this one had all those funky things, funky bends, I can just basically put a couple bends in there, just enough to get it over and lined up to that hole, and I should be good. All right, I'm just finishing this last one up. I got my bend in there, and I'm just gonna flare this last end and then put this piece on. Just like that. Well guys, my camera died, so I had to switch to my cell phone for this last little bit, but basically I got that piece on there. You see how I just did one bend, cut it a little bit shorter. I think it's gonna work real well. So I'm just tightening this up, and then I gotta bleed my lines, which is a whole nother deal. I'm sure you can find a video online to show how to do that. But basically it just amounts to loosening these areas back here on this and on these brake calipers right here. And basically you loosen them up, have somebody step on the brakes, and as they're stepping on it, you close it down, and you just keep doing that until you get oil coming through there on all the calipers. And then you should be good to go. Hope you got something out of all this. If you doing a brake job or some brake line work, and hopefully this helped. Have a good day.